I have a problem. See, addiction isn't a word foreign to most people's ears. It's a common enough condition, yet one that can take a few connotations. If I were to put this in a simple progression, to be addicted is to have lost control. To have lost control can turn into dependence, and frankly speaking, to be dependent is to be addicted. From something as trivial as, say, a chronic craving for food, to something as severe as a heavy reliance on drugs, addiction can take the form of even the most everyday things. It can be said with considerable certainty that if given the chance, each and every person will have gone up against addiction at some point in their lives, even if just on an extremely small scale. And that's just the way the human brain works, dopamine and all. And despite this common weakness we have, this one addiction we would have for one object or another, there are those looked down upon for their addictions. From the widespread negative connotation of drug addicts to the mundanity of people with chocolate addictions, there's really no safeguard against the massive ridicule that people with addictions face. As someone with a rather excessive caffeine addiction myself, I find it surprising how easily people would scorn addicts without any hesitation or second thought. I remember times back in midterms week in January where I would have, just say, 1, 2, even 3 cups of coffee before every test. And while I may have done this partially for the energy boost it would have given me, I will admit that it was more for simply satisfying a caffeine fix that would have eaten at me for an hour-and-a-half long test. And I can remember all the while how I got so many remarks from almost everyone, from close friends to small acquaintances to people I just passed by in the hallway. It is hypocrisy of the pettiest order, yet something that people really don't speak out against. And that said, I'd like to bring attention to a simple series of quotes. This is tea, not coffee. I'm not an addict like you are. I'm not a blank addict, and you're just an addict. These are words I hear on a regular basis, and in a friendly context, they don't have much serious negative intent, no hostility, anything like that. And yet, every time I hear this, I really have to focus on not taking offense. It's just between friends. But if the situation were to switch, say, instead of a small remark between one friend to another, it was between a stranger and a struggling alcoholic on the street. Now, not only do you have one person who is going through full well enough trouble in their lives, you have them getting verbal harassment from someone they don't even know. If someone were to tell me that addiction is a detriment in general, I wouldn't be able to argue well enough against them objectively. However, if they were to start mocking addicts with such a claim, that contention would fail to account for the fact that addiction is universal. It doesn't account for the fact that addiction can't always be prevented. It doesn't account for the fact that addiction can't always be properly controlled. And it frankly doesn't count for the fact that addicts need support, not ridicule. And even then, if the speaker suffers from addiction, even in the slightest case themselves, which you'll find more often than not is the case, then that fails to account for their own hypocritical insensitivity. I'm not saying we should ignore addiction. Acknowledging it is the first step to working with and around it. In the eyes of some, addicts may just seem like simple, impulsive people without any proper civility. In the eyes of even the addicts themselves, they may just seem like lost souls without any reason, with something wrong with their mind. And the fact of the matter is, addicts are people with problems. Problems that, if not solved, should be worked around. Let's say we play devil's advocate for a bit, and we assume a more idealized world. And in this world, people who are addicts are few in number, and that the majority of the population suffers from little to no addiction at all. Even in this case, derision would still be a poor course of action. At its most extreme yet most basic level, addiction is an ailment. And frankly, I wouldn't be able to say, if I were to sum this up all into one, I'd simply have to say to imagine yourself in an addict's shoes. I know that a bunch of people here may not consider themselves serious addicts, but empathy is one of the things we have as humans. You wake up and look to your feet, still groggy from having just opened your eyes. You're leaning against a wall, a building per se, on a sidewalk, and your clothes are all covered in mud. You look up and see the sun just barely on the horizon. It's morning, apparently. You have an empty bottle of liquor in your hand, say a cigarette or a blunt. You look for your phone, trying to find a clue as to what happened prior to then, but you find it out of battery, or perhaps you don't even find it at all. You look around for anyone who can provide you some aid, but all you're met with is the disdainful stares of people walking by. Struggling to get up, you just think to yourself, I need help. Thank you.